2, 1.
Hi, my name is Lynn Coffin, and I'm doing a series called Notable Nonagenarians, and I'm here today with a very notable nonagenarian, Irene Rostine. She was born on her grandparents' tobacco farm in North Carolina in 1924. Her long life has taken her to many far-off places. She's kissed the Blarney Stone in Ireland, and she has sipped wine on sidewalk cafes in Paris, watched the changing of the guard in London, and ridden an elephant in Thailand. Many times she's traveled north and south of the border and explored most of the United States. After graduating from high school, she went to work in an aircraft plant to rivet the tail cone of the B-17 Flying Fortress. In the 1940s, she moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. Then came marriage and 2 sons, William, a retired therapist, and Michael, a senior scientist for the NOAA. Her longevity has allowed for many careers. When Las Vegas began building the themed hotel casinos in the 1960s, she worked as director of communications from groundbreaking to completion on the Four Queens Circus and the Frontier Hotel. By the 1970s, Las Vegas was growing exponentially, and she opened Shamrock Realty, from which she retired 20 years later at the age of 70. Then she enrolled at the University of Nevada at Las Vegas, where she found her true passion, academia. She won many awards for her research and writing, including the 2011-2012 Southern Nevada History Award for the article From Wives to Wireless, From Wires to Wireless, depicting the growth of telecommunications in Southern Nevada. In 2006, the Review Journal featured her research on women war warriors in Southern Nevada in their book, The First 100 Portraits of Men and Women Who Shaped Las Vegas. She graduated cum laude with a bachelor's degree, and then at age 88 with a master's degree in American social history. In 2014, public television interviewed her for the program Makers, Women in Nevada History. As you can tell, life has been an exciting adventure for Irene, and she's a fascinating person. And I have to tell you that when I asked her to be interviewed, she said she was too boring and nobody would be interested. I can't believe it. If she's boring, then the rest of us are semi-conscious. Anyway, so there's so much in here, but I would like to start with riding an elephant.
Oh, that was an experience, believe me. You sat in a basket on the elephant's back, and the elephant walked, and it swayed back and forth, and we had to go across a river. And I looked down, and I thought, how many alligators are waiting for lunch down there as I sway back and forth in this basket? It was a one-time experience. I won't do it again.
No?
No.
And did you know, were there alligators in the rivers around there?
I think there were, but I didn't want to ask. I had too much information.
Okay, well now I wonder, if you kissed the Blarney Stone before that, does that mean that we have to take everything with a grain of salt? Tell me about that Blarney Stone.
Well, I went to Ireland. I spent a whole month in Ireland, in Paris, in London. And while I was in Ireland, I kissed the Blarney Stone, and I went to some of their castles, which surprisingly were very small.
Some of their what?
Castles.
Castles, small castles.
Yeah, the doorways were just hardly higher than my head.
Oh, wow.
I guess the people must have been very little in those days.
And what is the thing about do you know anything about the history of the Blarney Stone? Or everybody, I think, knows.
I think it was St. Patrick, wasn't it?
Patrick, yeah.
Yeah, I drove the snakes. No, that might be a different story.
But what is something supposed to happen to you when you kiss the Blarney Stone?
No, that's good luck.
That's good luck.
Just good luck. Which I did have good luck.
Right. It doesn't turn you into a fibber or anything.
Oh, an exaggerator maybe.
Okay. All right. So tell me about this working in the aircraft plant.
Well, I was a Rosie the Riveter, and I have my Rosie pin on.
Wow.
See?
That's great.
Yeah. Well, I belong to an organization here, And they had a luncheon meeting, and they were honoring all the servicemen from all the wars from Seattle. So at the end of all these awards and all these servicemen, they called my name, and I thought, what for?
I wasn't a serviceman that I knew.
No, I wasn't. But they said they were honoring me for my service as a Rosie the Riveter, riveting airplanes. I riveted the tail cone of the B-17, the Flying Fortress. That's where the tail gunner sat.
Wow.
Very dangerous position. And that's all that was made at that location. It was Bell Aircraft in Buffalo, New York. And Bell later manufactured helicopters.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I was the riveter, and a girl on the inside of the shell was a bucker. She held a piece of metal, a bucker. She held up
The term's wonderful.
Yeah.
With the riveter and the bucker, okay.
Right. She held a bar, and I shot the rivets. They all had to be uniform, even size, so you sort of got a little rhythm as you went along. But in case you got one too short, and it had to be drilled out. I was a drillee. I took my trusty drill. I was a teenager at the time. I just got first job out of high school.
So, yeah, well, let me ask you about that before we go. So, did you take a course in high school called How to Rivet?
No. The companies were so desperate for help, they took anything. I wasn't even old enough, I think, to get working papers.
How old were you?
I think maybe 16 or 17.
Wow.
I got out of high school very early. They made me skip grades, which was a terrible thing to do to a person, because you're kind of lost along the way there, you know.
Right.
But anyway, no, there was no course in that. It was on-the-job learning. And what they did, they de-skilled all the jobs during World War II,
Right.
so that women could go in and just do one thing and do it right, supposedly. So anyway, I would drill out the rivets, and sometimes I would drill so many times I would get a big hole like this. And then, of course, the supervisor came along. They never threw anything away, but they patched it. And then we'd start all over with this process.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was fun.
So you did this like 8 hours a day?
8 hours a day.
My goodness.
I think, and you know, they didn't have, it was in factories, and there was no separate facilities for men and women. You know, you just had to wait your turn.
Right.
And I think we got something like 20 minutes for lunch. And I don't think at that time they called for any rest periods in between. I think that was before labor laws.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, yeah.
And how long did you do this?
Well, I did it for maybe almost a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember about your salary or?
$25 a week.
Oh, my goodness.
Big money.
Big money in those days, yeah.
See, that's why I didn't go to college right away.
Okay. Yeah. So what is NOAA?
NOAA is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association
They have an office right here,
on
don't they?
Sandpoint.
Yeah.
And my son is the senior scientist there.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So how did you get to Las Vegas? You were born in North Carolina.
And lived in Buffalo maybe from 7 or 8 on till teenage. But my father got our job on the Union Pacific Railroad during World War II, and that's why we moved there.
Oh, so you moved as a family to Las Vegas.
Yeah, I didn't go by myself, not at that age.
Okay, but now tell your career in Las Vegas. So when did you start? You started work in Las Vegas.
Well,
you worked at was a realty company in the first place?
No. My very first job in Las Vegas was with a little telephone company, and everything was in one room.
You didn't rivet telephones.
No, I didn't rivet the telephones. They wouldn't let me. They wouldn't let me put my hands on any tools.
Right.
And so I was just a little operator, and so how the gamblers got their results had to be over phone lines. There was no communications like we have today.
Wow.
No cell phones, no faxes, nothing. So they had a bank of lights down at the bottom of the switchboard, and you knew this was the gamblers calling in. So I picked up this call this time, and I got through to San Diego so fast that he got his results before anybody in Vegas. So he said to me, when you get done, come down here, I have something for you. That was the Golden Nugget on First and Fremont at the time. It's all since moved back and become elegant. But anyway, I went down after work, and I can't recall, but I believe the man's name was Gus Greenbaum. And he handed me $100 bill. Now, for a teenager in 1940, that 100 was like $1 million.
Right.
I mean, I just tap danced my way all the way home to show my folks what I looked like.
Weren't you afraid the wind would blow it at you?
I hung on to that baby. That wasn't going anywhere.
So you were in Las Vegas,
Uh-huh.
and he was in San Diego?
No, the gambler was in Las Vegas. He was at the Golden Nugget in Vegas.
I see.
But to get his results, I had to make a phone call to San Diego for him.
I see.
And I got it through so fast that he beat everybody in Vegas. He had results before anybody else.
Wow.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And apparently he won that night, too.
He must have. That was my tip,
Right.
my percentage.
That was great. And so how long did you work at the telephone company?
Well, let's see. I worked there until, maybe I would say the 60s, because that's when they started with the themed hotels.
I see.
Four Queens. The Four Queens was on Fremont Street, and Benny Goffstein had 4 daughters. He married a head chorus girl in one of the strip hotels, had 4 daughters, and that's how the Four Queens got named, for his daughters, Four Queens. Yeah, so that's when they started with the themed hotel. So I did Four Queens first, then...
When you say did, you worked as a telephone operator?
No. I was the department head.
Oh, okay. Department head of...
Telecommunications.
All right.
Yeah. And then I went to... The Frontier was next. And I worked there from the time they broke the ground to put the building up. I wore a little hard hat. It was a great experience because I could boss men around, you know.
Yeah. And how did you get from operating on a telephone to being head of communication?
Well, because I didn't stay as an operator all the time. I got promoted like to service advisor, and I would go out and advise people on things, you know.
Right.
And try to help them when they needed to upgrade, how much they needed and what to get rid of and how to be more efficient and things like that. So I didn't remain a little telephone operator the whole time. I got promoted and everything. I learned everything and I remembered everything.
Yeah, well, okay. So you did that until
about the mid-60s, I would say, about the mid-60s. And then I did the Frontier. And then from there, I went to Circus and started that from ground up.
Wow.
And then along came Howard Hughes and ruined everything.
Really?
Yes.
Why did he ruin it?
Well, he started buying up all the casinos on the Strip. And I think it was the Gaming Commission had to stop him because he was getting a monopoly. Mm-hmm. But after that, you see, when the gamblers ran everything, there was comps and free food and free drinks, and because gambling is what counted. Then Howard Hughes came along, and everything had to be under like a corporate structure. Every department had to pay its way. So then there was all those nice little freebies were gone. You know?
Oh dear.
Yeah, oh dear, that's right.
Is that part of why you left? You went to realty? What?
Well, because, let me see, early 70s, I would say, there were 10,000 people a month coming into Las Vegas. And so I saw a golden opportunity. And I thought, boy, Vegas is my oyster now. And so I got my broker's license, and I opened this little company called Shamrock Realty for luck. I guess because I kissed the Blarney Stone.
Right. That's great.
And so anyway, I had salesmen working for me, which they didn't work for me, they worked under me because the salesmen were independent contractors. They did their own taxes and paid, you know, I just gave them a commission as part of the commission. So anyway, I saw that as a golden opportunity, which it really was, because all these people coming in needed a place to live. And so Del Webb was building a lot of senior communities. A lot of seniors moved there. Free buffets, you know.
Right,
and
right.
all like good stuff. So that's how I got into
Right.
that.
And how long did you do that?
I retired my license at 70. I
70.
was 70 years old.
And you'd been doing Shamrock for, did you turn it over to somebody or did
No,
you?
I just closed it.
Just closed it.
And somebody else took my name right after. They're not supposed to do that, but they gave Shamrock to somebody else.
Oh dear.
That's my name. So anything that went wrong later, they could look at me.
Oh no.
But anyway, then that's when I enrolled at UNLV.
Right.
And that I found that was really my true love. My true passion was academia. And I loved it. I just couldn't get enough of it, you know.
So what courses did you start? Was there some particular area that really?
I started as a special student. I didn't enroll, but you could go as a special student, and once you accumulated 15 credits, then you could enroll. You didn't have to take the SAT or any of those tests, which frightened me, you know. I mean, I'd been out of school a long time. So anyway, when I had 15 credits, I enrolled, and I think my first class, I started with psychology. But then the professor said my writing was too flowery. It was not scientific enough, that she suggested I do something else.
Right.
So then I enrolled in the history department.
Oh.
So I became a historian.
Okay.
Yeah, and that I like that. I like the research. I like digging into things and putting parts of the puzzle together.
Right. Well, and it sounds like people liked what you were writing. They didn't find it too flowery, just flowery enough, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
tell me about this that eventually led to your writing, doing these interviews. Speaking of our interview, you did interviews with women working in Las Vegas from the 40s to the 80s?
80s. That's just when women were coming into their own in the workforce. World War II is supposed to have been the great turning point for women in the workforce. And so I located women that had actually worked and done the experiences that I wrote about, and I took their oral interviews. And I took them on my little tape recorder, which I later tamed the tapes over to the library at UNLV, and they transferred them to CDs.
Oh.
And so all of these interviews are now at the library in Las Vegas.
That's great.
Yeah. And I did lots and lots of them because I started with women war workers because in World War II, the government sent men to build this huge magnesium plant. I think it was 1.75 miles wide and 1 mile long.
And where was this?
Well, it is what is now is Henderson, but there was no Henderson at the time.
I see.
This made Henderson. Well, we had a Boulder Dam for power and water, and magnesium was just 90 miles north. The ore was 90 miles north of Vegas, so it was the ideal site for this plant. And magnesium was used for airplane parts and shell casings. So and my mother-in-law was one of the women that worked there, so I had sort of an in
Right.
to finding all these other women that did that. you
Right.
know. So I took all their interviews, and I called them the Magnesium Maggies, and they were Nevada.
It's like Rosie the Riveter, magnesium.
That's right. That's why I did it, because Rosie the Riveter got a lot of attention. These ladies, nobody knew anything about them until I dug them up. And I said, this was Nevada's answer to Rosie the River.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Do you remember the first interview you did?
Yeah, I think I do.
Or an early one? Just like people that worked at the plant?
Yeah, Elmer Hilsinger was one. He was a foreman there. And of course, my mother-in-law, Della Mae Rostine, she was one of the interviews. And then it led to a lot of other women that had worked there.
But one of the early ones was a man.
Well, yeah,
How did he
was
get
a
in there?
foreman. Well, I allowed him because he had some good stories to tell me. But I'll tell you one story. There was a lady that worked at the Las Vegas Laundry, and they hired her at Basic in the, what do you call it, the chemistry department.
A Basic?
The Basic Magnesium.
Oh, okay.
Basic Magnesium Inc. they hired her in the chemistry department. She had no experience in chemistry, no background. She'd worked in a laundry. But what the theory was, if a woman could follow a recipe and bake a cake in her kitchen, then she could follow a recipe in the chemistry department and not blow the place up.
Well, how did the laundry work? If a woman could put clothes, wash clothes?
Yeah. There was a laundry in Las Vegas. We were modern. We were a big city, you know.
Right.
And so, yeah, she worked there as a laundress, and when they built this plant, of course, they're going to make big money, better money than working in a laundry.
Right.
And she applied, and I guess she was intelligent, and she could read and stuff, so they hired her.
Wow.
But the theory was, if you could bake a cake, follow a recipe and bake a cake, then you could follow a recipe and mix these chemicals and not blow the place up.
It was a good thing I was not hired.
But the place is still standing today.
Oh, nobody blew it up.
Nobody blew it up.
So you did these interviews. When did you start doing the interviews?
I guess maybe in the 90s sometime.
Did you have in mind, how did you, sort of like you did with Las Vegas, you recognized here was a story, right? Here was a...
Yeah, I did. Well, I had a professor, Jay Coftry, and I had to write a term paper. And I said, oh, I'll write about Rosie the Riveter. He said, no, you won't. You're going to write something else. You're going to write something about local people. And then I thought about my mother-in-law. And I connected, so
right.
I thought, I'll write about these women then.
Right.
And sort of what I wrote about sort of parallel my own life.
Right.
Because I was a Rosie the Riveter.
Right.
And I wrote this book called Our Turn. It's Working Women in Las Vegas to 1940 to 1980. And the sections of women I wrote about women working in a corporate structure. Well, I used the telephone company for my corporate structure. Then I wrote about women entrepreneurs.
Oh,
and how they, and I was in real estate.
Right.
So it kind of paralleled my life, you know.
So what haven't you done?
Well,
You've been in academia, corporate structure, real estate, gambling, telephone.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was 62, I enrolled in the Miss Senior USA pageant. And I played an organ, but I couldn't drag the organ down there and play it, so I took a crash course in clog dancing. I did. And
Clog dancing.
Clog dancing. I mean, that's tough stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was Miss Runner-Up Clark County.
Wow.
Yeah, I was. And so I was going to go on and go all the way to Atlantic City. But in the meantime, I had enrolled in UNLV, and I had fallen in love with academia, and that was the thing of the past then.
Never mind clog dancing.
No more of that stuff.
How did the #1 person of the county do at the nationals? How did she?
She was pretty old. I don't think she did anymore either. I don't think she followed through. But she was very lovely. She was from Boulder City. She did a reading, and she got first. She was Miss Clark County.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So maybe you could teach. Could you teach clog?
Oh, but I can't put one foot in front of the other anymore.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
And so when you finished that, then how did you? You did what is this? The first 100? Was that the beginning of the?
Oh, that was in 2000. The Review Journal. Well, Las Vegas was incorporated in 1904. So that was like the first 100 years.
I see.
And so they did this series on the first 100, and they used my Magnesium Maggies in there as women who helped shape Las Vegas.
I see.
Uh-huh.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so are you writing today? Are you to pursue that?
I'm kind of stumbling along. I have maybe 6 or 7 stories started, but you know, I know the ending already, and it's boring now. So I quit.
Well, maybe you should turn to the more fictional side of things.
Yeah.
Start with this and then make it where we don't know the ending.
Yeah, let it be a surprise.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I love to write. I have 2 or 3 awards for that.
Yeah. Tell me about the awards. What was the first award that
I think the first award was from the best paper for a graduating senior. And it was the Wright Award. And then I got the award from Southern Nevada for writing from wires to wireless.
Right.
Because that was, you know, when your phone was stuck on the wall to where you walk around with your cell phone.
Right.
I researched all that and got an award for that. And then, of course, I got for the Maggies.
Right.
And then this book that I wrote, this Our Turn, the library at UNLV put that online.
Uh-huh.
And anybody can download it. It's free. I mean, I should have put it on Amazon.
Right. And you told me that you had like 700 readers?
I think almost 800, 766.
Wow.
But the best part is not how the readership so much, is where it's being read. Because it's read all over the world. Every month I get a report on my cell phone of how many readership for the month and where the readership is. And this month was Great Britain, Russia, one in Russia, and also it tells me what kind of readership. Now, there was one commercial, and I imagine that must be the Russian reading.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, and then there was some in 5 in the States or 6 in the States. And when I get the most readership is like in May or November, because all the college students are having to write their papers, and they're going to my stuff for research.
Right.
Just to cite it.
So this is online that they
It's
go?
online. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And is it like on Amazon, or how do you?
No. You put Our Turn, the title in.
Right.
It'll come up.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And it's free. I mean, if anybody wants to read my boring writing.
I don't. Doesn't sound might be too flowery, but
Well, that's what that psychology teacher said.
I know.
Your writing is too flowery. Do something else.
I don't think it sounds like imaginative would have been a better
Yeah.
word for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now I know you are investigating Spanish or learning Spanish.
Well, I'm kind of babbling along, you know. I did it ever since I came here, and it's something to do. I like the language, and it's fun. We have a good time in there. We laugh and joke. We make a lot of mistakes, so it's fun.
Right.
Yeah.
So what led you to do that?
Something to do.
Uh-huh.
And then I take their creative writing class here with Val.
Uh-huh.
And that's just something to do, too.
Yeah. Well, so you do that, so have you taken some of your writing about the women and done fictional? Or you mostly stick to the facts?
Well, no, I have done some fiction. I've done something called The Ice Cream Man, a mystery.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, Well, this ice cream truck is parked in this neighborhood at midnight,
Okay.
just out of sight of the lamppost, you know. What is he doing there at
Right.
this hour? He's not selling ice cream,
Right.
so, and it goes on from there.
Right. Now, is that finished? Have you finished that?
I'm at the end now, but you see, I know what's going to happen. I know how it's going to end. I quit.
So can't you surprise yourself to change the ending?
I
Or
should
write
do
an
that.
ending after the ending?
I could write 2 endings.
Yeah,
I
right.
did that one time.
Yeah.
I wrote a thing called The Gentleman's Game. It's about golfers and 4 old men that went out every week, regular, played golf, had breakfast together, and so forth and so on. And so at 3 of them were strong and walked, and one was kind of old and feeble, and so he took a cart. And the old feeble fellow, he finally got a hole in one, and he ran up there and dropped dead on the green. So I gave it 2 endings. 4 young players came along, and they were rude, and they said, "Could you move them aside, please, so we can play through?" And the other one, his friends cradled him in their arms as we waited for the ambulance to come, and so you could take your choice.
Right. Which ending do you prefer?
I like the second one, where they were kind to him, and
Yeah.
I think that, you know, some people are very rude, and they do that on the golf course.
Yeah.
So I was a golfer too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how did that happen? I was going to say you chose men golfing, and I didn't think that had
Well,
any...
see, it wasn't all work. I had to play, and I played a lot.
Okay.
And golf was one of my playthings. I brought my clubs here. And I played one time since I've been here.
And how was that?
It was fun. It was great. But I was a real wimpy. I mean, I've lost it.
Oh, well, but if you enjoyed playing.
I
right?
did. It was wonderful.
And did you find a group here that was...
Well, Virginia Morrison and Cam, the three of us played together.
Oh, that's great.
Uh-huh. And that was Virginia's last time because her knees bothered her.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have golfing that you've done since coming here, and you're doing the creative writing and the Spanish. Is there anything else that interests you or attracts you?
Well, I try to go to the gym as much as I can. She knows that.
Right. So what do you do? Do you have a trainer at the gym? Or?
No. I do the new stuff. I had a therapist here one time, and so we went down to the gym, and she showed me how to adjust the machine and all like that. So, but I enjoy going to that because I like to sit in the window and watch everybody walk by, and I wave to everybody from U-House, you know.
Yeah. So, and what is the machine you mentioned? The
New Step.
New Step. That's like a treadmill combination.
Well, it works your arms and your legs, and it's a
Okay.
good cardio workout too.
Yeah.
It's a great cardio workout.
That sounds great. So I wonder if you would have any words of advice to people who are watching the program. I mean, was there some philosophy that, or a spiritual thing that kept you doing all these different things and starting over and starting over?
No, I think the best thing that you can have is a sense of humor and not take yourself too seriously. Don't worry about what other people are thinking about you. Just be yourself, you know.
Right. I know. Sometimes I said that there were two rules for being a parent. That if the one was have a good sense of humor and everything, and the other one was nerves of steel.
That's true.
You see your kids going out for the first time driving or whatever.
Oh my goodness, yes.
You have to have nerves of steel. Yeah.
Well, you know, when my oldest son was 16, we bought him an old junker, and it didn't run. He's supposed to work on this until he was old enough to get his license, and then he could drive it if he could make it work. But he got it working too soon.
Sounds like his mother.
Yeah. And it was parked in the garage, and we had a brand new car parked in the driveway, and he got this thing in reverse and zoomed out and smacked into the new car. His father's hanging out the window. What's going on down there? I said, oh, nothing. Go back to bed. Go back to bed.
Yeah. One last question I wanted to ask is about, so you do the writing a lot. Who do you read? What kind of reading do you like to do?
I like to read fiction. I do like nonfiction, a lot of but I like fiction because it takes you away from this world into someplace else.
Yeah.
And it's relaxing.
That's interesting. My own thing is that I've grown completely away from fiction because I always feel like, you know, I have a good imagination too. I could always imagine, but I like it when it actually happened.
Yeah.
That seems more interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, when you do your face, is it like the movies going through your head? That's what I see, pictures of this, all of this.
And do you hear people talking to you?
Yeah.
Of course.
See, that's my downfall. I do not like to do the words they're speaking.
The words?
Yeah, I don't like to. That's well, you know, you have to put them in quotations, and that's hard. I don't like typing.
Oh, the dialogue.
Dialogue. That's what I meant to say. The dialogue.
So plays would not be something that.
No, I don't think a play would be good for me. Too much talking.
You seem more a woman of action for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have? Is there a motto or something that you? Oh, do you have like in your apartment? Do you have a motto or a slogan that you like?
Not really. I like about everything.
Right.
Yeah. No, I don't have any mottos or slogans. I do have my martini daily, though.
Okay.
I attribute that to my long life.
Okay.
That's my vitamins. One a day. Only one.
So instead of mottos, you would recommend martinis.
I recommend. It's wonderful. It lowers your blood pressure, does all kinds of fine things for
But
you.
doesn't lead you to have more martinis.
Oh, no,
No.
one is enough. At 97, I mean, you can just,
You want to watch the martinis, right?
I make sure the walker is very handy when I have my martini.
That's wonderful. Well, I really, really appreciate your coming and doing this interview, and especially with such late notice, and it's been fascinating, and I wonder how someone with your life and your interests could think of yourself as boring or think that people are not going to be. It's absolutely fascinating, and I really appreciate your talking about it with me.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for having me. And I just babble on. I talk too much, I
It's
think.
wonderful. I love it. I wish all people would babble in the creative, entertaining way that you do. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Lynn.